Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you so much to my colleague from Battleford's Lloyd Minister behind me here for this incredible bill that will bring parity, equity, mental health, and attachment to adoptive and intended parents. So what we're talking about today for folks watching is C318, which was created, as I said, by my friend and colleague and member from Battleford's Lloyd Minister. And I think I'll just give an overview, and I'm going to give some compelling testimony that we heard in the Human Resources Committee today, and I'm really going to hammer home how common sense this bill is and how it should have been done long, long ago, and yet, like so many things in this House, here we are. So Bill C318 introduces a new 15-week benefit for adoptive and intended parents through the Employment Insurance Program and adjusts the Canadian Labour Code accordingly. So for a lot of people, myself included, I actually didn't know that this was an issue. So I had biological children, and I just assumed that adoptive parents or intended parents, which means surrogacy, everybody was entitled to the same amount of unemployment leave or mat leave or paternity leave, which a lot of people know those as the common names. So I was entitled to 52 weeks. But the reality is the way that the current system works is that they don't have access to that. They're cut 15 weeks short. And you would say, well, why? And it's a great question. Why? It's no more financial stress on the system, and we know these parents need this time to attach. So I want to tell you a little bit about the politics that always bleeds into this place and why common sense often gets left behind. This was an election platform promise in the last 2 elections by the Liberals that they would have this in their policy. And here we are. Still not here. Not a shock. And that's the reality of what we have in this country. So this has went through first reading. Now what we're asking for in this debate today in the House is for royal recommendation. And nothing will happen if we don't get that. And we've had the support of this House. It's passed through the first reading. In fact, everybody voted in favor of this except Liberals. 4 Liberals supported it, and thank you to those that did and parked their partisan politics for the greater good and for parity. This article I want to go through with you because I think it really highlights the human component of this. I think sometimes when we talk about policy and legislation, it feels very clinical, but there are very real human consequences to the decisions made in this House. Everything does come back to policy. So this is an article that was written by Aaron Clow. It was posted in The Province, which is a news publication. And I want to read to you some of these words that she has written. At the end of my first leave in 2020, I long for more time with our son. Nearing the end of this leave, I feel a weight that is difficult to articulate, laden with sadness, fear, guilt, and grief, knowing that we as a family need more time to attach. In the early days of both parental leaves, the hours, days, and weeks seem long. Honestly, we were strangers who overnight became a family. We knew very little about each other, and most importantly, we didn't know how to trust, let alone love one another. Each day was a monumental exercise in courage. We spent our time learning about one another, learning about routines, what they liked and what they didn't like, learning how to be parents, learning to love one another. Now again, I kind of come back to my own experience as a first-time mom, and that's exactly how it feels when you give birth. But imagine taking and adopting a child that has already lived in the world, has already formed feelings and emotions, and you have to attach, you have to make up for all of that time. Ideally, actually, adoptive and intended parents should have more. If you think about the biology and the physiology of what they have to overcome, and yet they have less under this legislation. It makes no sense. It took months for me to start becoming the parent they deserved. I would challenge you on that, Erin. I bet you were exactly the mother they needed from the day they were born and you were meant to be together. But I know that feeling of mom guilt. Now all that remains are 27 days. This supported parental leave will end in 27 days, and I can say without a doubt we need more time. Isn't that the most valuable commodity we have on this planet, Madam Speaker? Our daughter and son need additional time. We need months, not days, to continue the process of facilitating secure, enduring attachment for all members of our family. And, you know, I think it's just a very powerful article that she writes that really reiterates what it's like for these adoptive parents. And I want to go through some of the testimony that we heard in committee, and I want to reiterate sort of the common sense of this in terms of a financial piece, because parents are already paying into the system. It's not like you're trying to find this money. It's already funded. Like so many programs that we see right now that the Liberals are pushing out to people, they're not funded, right? Their pharmacare program, that's their child care program, that's underfunded and not working. It's not funded. This is a really common sense bill that makes it easy to give the foundation for kids to thrive and for families to thrive. And quite frankly, another conversation a lot of people don't want to have in this country is the cost of living is increasing so much. Young people, my daughter has said this to me, she goes, I can't have kids. I could never afford that. What a feeling to have. What a feeling to have in this country to not feel like you can afford to have a house, to feed your family, or to choose to have children, which is the greatest, most gift in the world. And not for people who choose not to have children, it's totally fine, but I'm saying to take away that choice, it's a real issue in our country. Most children adopted in Canada are over the age of 10 at the time of placement, and many have a history of trauma or serious loss. Having their parent or caregiver at home longer in the critical first year gives them time to form attachments and begin processing their grief and loss. And I know, I believe my member opposite, and she may be able to just chime, I know she's over my shoulder. There was one woman in particular, and I think it was Kathy Murphy, who talked about her child didn't call her mama for, 3 years? 3 years, just, hey, lady. And that is so powerful, because showing up, whether you're an adoptive parent or an intended parent or a biological parent, showing up for your kids when they're having a hard time is tough. Yeah. It is the toughest responsibility any of us parents will ever face in our lives. And their behavior is communication. And these kids need so much more time to build trust. They don't have that. They've never had that. And the trauma that many of them have faced is very, very real. And financial stress is like one of the biggest stressors in a family dynamic. If you're sitting there worried about how you're going to pay the mortgage or pay for food or pay for groceries or put gas in the car, guess what? You can't be the parent you need to be to the kid who needs you. So this is so simple to say, okay, don't worry. Your EI that you've already paid into is here for you to help you be the best parent you can be. This is a very simple bill. Of the 63,000 children currently in care, 30,000 are eligible for permanent adoption by loving families. And listen to this, Madam Speaker, only 2,000 are adopted each year. How many of those children are out there who don't know where they fit, who don't know that they have somewhere that they belong? What a feeling. And maybe if more parents knew that there was incentives and help for them to give the love that they have in them to give, that number would go up. Exactly. Kyla Bezwarek was adopted at age 10 with her 2 siblings, and she said in committee, it took me 2 or 3 years to form that attachment. Her mom had to quit her job, take care of Kyla's high needs, including doctor and therapist appointments and adjusting to school, and couldn't access parental leave. Kyla, now 21, who's amazing, said, imagine how I perceive the world, enduring such big breaks in trust and new environments. I was so young. That extra time would have helped me, she says. Ashley Bach also testified at committee. How much time do I have, Madam Speaker? Not very much. Okay, I will read this one final one into the record because I think it is most powerful. It's from Julie Despatier, as Executive Director of Adopt for Life. I would like to leave you with these thoughts. If we want a stronger tomorrow for our children, we must do right by them. As my good friend Irwin Ellman, a former Ontario Child and Youth Provincial Advocate, says, you can't legislate love, but you can legislate the conditions in which love can flourish.
Excellent.
Resuming debate.